Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Safety and Health webcast. Uh, we'll start the presentation in about 1 minute. Thank you so much for joining us. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Just to let you know, we'll start the presentation in about 30 seconds. The official hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast, Frontline Impact, Engaging EHS Teams in Advancing Safety with Practical AI, sponsored by Benchmark Gen Suite. This is Alan Ferguson. I'm an associate editor at Safety and Health and co-host the On the Safe Side podcast, and I'll be moderating today's event. Thank you once again for joining us. And before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items. As a disclaimer, the views of today's speaker and organization are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health Magazine. Any mention of a commercial enterprise product or publication does not mean the Council of the Magazine endorses those items. After today's presentation, we'll conduct a question and answer session with our speaker. If you have a question, click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question, and press the send button. We welcome your questions at any time during today's event. You don't have to wait for the Q&A to begin. We might not get to every question, but the good news is unanswered questions will be forwarded to today's sponsor. Also, after this presentation, you'll be asked to complete a brief evaluation survey, and I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. And just to let you know, this webcast will be archived so you can access it after today's live event. To view this webcast and all of our past webcasts, please visit safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events, or you may also receive a link in our post-event email. With that, let's introduce today's speaker. With us today is Donovan Hornsby, Chief Market Strategy Officer at Benchmark Gen Suite. Donovan has dedicated the past 20 years of his career to advancing EHS and sustainability principles and best practices in the industry. At Benchmark Gen Suite, an industry-leading digital platform for EHS and sustainability programs, Donovan provides strategic directions for global business and market development, as well as product leadership and innovation. And in addition to organizational leadership responsibilities, he's an active thought leader and member of cross-industry efforts to advance and promote best practices within EHS, sustainability, and ESG industries. Donovan, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it.
Great. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity, Alan. Thank you. And thank you to the NSC organization. I certainly admire the great work that you all do as a greater team, been involved with your efforts, some of the initiatives around Work to Zero and MSD prevention and elimination, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to join folks today and share with you all a little bit of a view to frontline impact, as we've called it here, and some of the work that we've been doing with our community around technology to help advance the safety practice and programs within your organizations. I imagine some of you on the phone right now may be familiar with us. What I'd like to do, for those that may not be, is to give you a little bit of background on us and then launch into some of the themes and discussion items I had planned to share with you today. Just a heads up too, I'm based in South Carolina near the coast, and much like others in the South Carolina and North Carolina and Tennessee areas, we've been experiencing some intermittent service interruptions and such. So if for whatever reason my internet drops during this hour here, I'm going to rejoin by my phone. So just give me a couple of minutes. I'll ask Alan to fill the space with some questions and Q&A and such, but hopefully we won't have to worry about that. But just in case, if I go silent, it'll only be for a couple of minutes before I'm able to rejoin back in. So just a little bit of background for those of you that may not be familiar with us. So as Alan alluded to there, I've been working in the EHS and sustainability space now for the greater part of my professional career, 20 plus years. And a lot of that time has been spent working with organizations like yours to help advance what you're trying to do from an employee safety, health and safety, environmental stewardship, and sustainability standpoint. And the way that we do that really is by partnering with folks like yourselves to, as we say, operationalize EHS and sustainability within your programs and activities there. And we do that through a best practice-based enterprise software solution, complemented by some various technologies, some of which I'm going to get into today here. So hopefully that's helpful, a little bit of background and context for who we are. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, our bread and butter is in EHS and sustainability at the top of the wheel there. But we are helping folks in other functional disciplines like quality, supply chain risk, product stewardship, and most recently helping folks address issues like CSRD and other types of ESG disclosures, voluntary or otherwise. And so happy to spend a little bit of time digging into a little bit of this with a focus on frontline worker and how we've been working with our community over the past few years to help apply some advanced technologies, including AI, to do that. So that's a little bit of background on us. And I thought I'd start today. I was actually just at Tennessee Congress in Orlando a few weeks back. I guess it's been 2 or 3 weeks at this point. And I, like some of you that may have attended that or may have attended safety seminars and sessions over the years, I attended a session where the speakers had kicked off things with a conversation around blue line, black line. Many of you that have been working in the safety space are familiar with this concept, where really the goal and the challenge has always been to address the gap that is inherently there between the expectations that we have as corporate leadership, as an organization, and what actually happens on the shop floor, in the field, both from an operational standpoint, but also from a safety standpoint, obviously. And it's been interesting sitting in on these conversations over the years. This is a concept that's been around for a long time. What I'd like to share with you today is that I think we have, probably more than we ever have in the past, a great opportunity to close that gap. And when I say close that gap, I think sometimes when people talk about blue line, black line, we often spend a lot of time figuring out ways that we can actually influence the blue line, which is, as you can see in my graph here, is really the performance there with respect to the expectation or work as imagined or as expected there on the shop floor and in the field. And I think sometimes what we run into or forget perhaps is that oftentimes closing of the gap requires us to influence the black line as well. And so that's one of the things that I'd like to talk about today, and talk about that through the lens of process improvement and technology to help close that gap. So that's the basis for the conversation today. What's kind of been working in the background here is I've kind of titled here some of the kind of recent trends and shifts that we've seen, both from a regulatory standpoint as well as a market standpoint, and then how technology has begun to influence that. Is really the basis for, I think, what is a huge opportunity for us to start kind of changing the direction of what we've been doing for the past couple of decades now. I think we've obviously, as an industry, as a group of EHS professionals, have greatly influenced the performance, safety performance of our companies and our organizations and our teams. But there are still some challenges that all of us face there, whether it's closing that gap between expectations and reality on the floor, or when you talk about things like significant incidents and fatalities and such. These are still issues that plague us and haunt us, and really the reason why NSC, through their Work to Zero initiative and other organizations, have been working deliberately and aggressively to identify things like new technologies to help us get at that, because it still continues to haunt us in many ways. The other thing that obviously has been around for a long time, this is nothing new, but we certainly have seen this over the past few years, is a gap in terms of resources and talent representing EHS and safety specifically within our operations there. And so any ways that we can accelerate folks' learning and experience in order to take but I'll talk a little bit later, the 30-year career of a safety veteran, and being able to take that insight and that experience and embed that into the operations of the company, and also enhance the experience of our younger folks that are coming into the space. The more that we can do there, the better. Our processes, our operational changes continue to grow in complexity. One interesting thing that we're also seeing is supply chain, whether it's through regulatory activity coming out of Europe and in other regions like CSRD, supply chain, whether you're talking about suppliers within your value chain or contractors that may be coming on site to perform. A lot of the expectations for performance are being pushed to those groups. No longer are we focused within the four walls of our operation, but we're having to spend a lot more time within the value chain, as well as with our contractor communities, where we have shifted some of the operational burden from our direct employees to those folks in those populations. It increases, obviously, the risks, and our ability to influence is also challenged. And so for these reasons, and many others, we've been looking at and continue to work at technologies that can help address this more directly. AI, this is not intending to be an AI educational session at all. I think everybody's been following what's been happening over the past couple of years now with AI and in particular, Gen AI. Some of you may have have experimented with things like ChatGPT and others to perhaps write better emails, or perhaps do a little bit of research on how you can address certain aspects of your programs, kind of digging into the wealth of knowledge that sits out there in some of these large learning models or databases and such. And certainly I think we have a tremendous opportunity. I spoke at the NSC events over the past year at the Future of EHS, and have in the past about some of the work that we've been doing over the past 5 or 6 years around AI. And it's been interesting to see how that's progressed. And I think AI is a pretty massive topic, pretty broad in terms of the different types of technologies. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about applied AI. I think the challenge that we always have with AI is that I think some folks become paralyzed by the concept and thinking, well, this is such an advanced thing, I'm just trying to get the basic building blocks in place in terms of my safety program or sustainability program and my sites. I don't have the bandwidth to be thinking about things like AI that seem like this kind of newfangled, shiny object, and it's not necessarily practical. The reality is that AI is very practical, and I'd like to share with you a few examples of that today, starting with some things that I think folks can embed into existing processes that you have, all the way up to some things that perhaps are a little bit more shiny object, a little bit more sophisticated in things, but are certainly accessible to anybody. I think that's one of the messages that I want folks to take away from this, is that some of these technologies that I'll talk about today are not the purview of just large, sophisticated organizations with a ton of resources. We have organizations within our community that are quite small, that are starting to apply some of these technologies. So it is available to everyone, any type of organization, no matter the maturity of your program, the level of sophistication or lack thereof, or resources. It's there, and I'm here to share with you some of the examples of that. So at this point, I wanted to launch a quick poll question just to get folks kind of engaged and warmed up here. So if you can take a look at that, and we'll just give a minute here for folks to respond, and then take a look at the results, and then we'll continue on. I think we might have a little mismatch between our poll question that we're sharing on the screen here in my PowerPoint deck versus what's actually displayed online here. But if you can go ahead and address the one you see there within your poll question, that'd be great. And we have some results back. Very interesting. So the question was, how's your organization's investment in AI for EHS changing in the next 12 months? Still some folks that are trying to figure things out, not surprisingly there. Some folks that are still on the sidelines, I'll say, waiting to kind of see how this plays out. But for those that have started to make a move, the investment is growing. And I think that's pretty consistent with what we've seen within our community, for sure. So continuing on, so a little bit of additional background. So, obviously we're going to talk, as I alluded to there, about some advanced technologies and some very simple practical examples or applications of those advanced technologies. But I think it's important for you all to understand a little bit more about the context for our solutions and the technology and how we're coming from this, and how these technologies complement it. And so if you think about just typical workflows, processes within many of your EHS operations, you obviously have things like incident management workflows, where folks are, you may have out there supervisors that are logging incidents or events, or you may have folks out there that are logging good catches or concerns or observations that then flow through some type of workflow, whether or not you digitize it, that or not. It's following some type of workflow, and that's the type of thing that we have been doing for many years now, where folks are logging incidents and observations and concerns or good catches, and it flows through, and it brings in folks from other functional disciplines like maintenance, for example, to address issues and carry out and follow up on action items. All of that's flowing into ultimately some type of analytics or reporting or insights that you can then hopefully take and then understand where you need to spend your time. So very typical kind of standard process. The other thing at the top left of your screen there that I wanted to talk about is a little bit of context for what I'm going to share next. And that is perhaps a deeper level of frontline engagement. So when we talk about frontline engagement and frontline workers and such, a lot of times when we're talking about safety programs, that might stop at your supervisors. It may not engage folks that are out there actually getting the work done, working, in field service, providing, maintenance or performing some type of activity on the shop floor and in the field there. And so in many ways, we haven't necessarily gotten to the true front line. And, obviously when we talk about things like closing the gap between expectations that we may have and the actual performance and actual work being done, in some cases, we may not be getting close enough to the work. And that's really the message here, part of the message here. And so how do we get that? And some of you may have, and certainly in cases where you have field service operations or perhaps construction project type work that you're doing there, you may have some folks that are doing, tailgate talks. You may have pre-startup, job pre-startup safety type reviews. These are the types of things I'm talking about here that I'll talk a little bit more about getting closer to the front line and really looking at ways that we can embed safety in what's in actually the work being done there. Again, not safety as a separate exercise, but safety as an embedded part of the work that we do. So with that as a little bit of context, I wanted to share with you kind of my first introduction into some of the technology that we've been working on. So for many, many years, we have been investing in mobile technology. And I mean, this goes back, I'm dating myself, it goes back to the days of Pocket PC, if any of you are old enough to remember that. It goes back a very long time. And those were the early days of mobile use. And obviously over the years, mobile became ubiquitous and it's everywhere now. But the reality is, as many of you know, and maybe you're facing this within your own organizations, there are still folks that aren't using mobile to do things like carrying out observations or providing folks an easy way to log good catches or concerns, and you're still perhaps waiting to go back to a computer or a kiosk to log that in and not necessarily capturing that at the point of action. And even in those cases, I would say that we still have been challenged. Some of you that maybe have tried launching mobile within your organization to help fully digitize some of these processes and simplify them, I don't think we've fully cracked the nut in terms of simplification, because there's reasons why folks still choose not to do it, and they wait at the end of the day to come back and report out on something. And it could be because perhaps the forms that you have within your mobile devices are still too complex. Maybe they're too small. There's all kinds of just from a form factor standpoint and usability standpoint, things that are getting in the way. Or it could be that the nature of the information that you're either presenting to those folks or trying to capture those folks, again, is too high level, too complex, too much perhaps. And there's still opportunity in many ways to simplify that. And so this is the first thing I want to share with you, is some of the work that we've been doing over the years, and certainly most recently, to really look at greatly simplifying that, so that what you're doing on the front line is truly reflective of the work, and actually embedding safety considerations into the actual work that's being done. So when you have folks that are getting ready to start a job, and they're looking at that job and kind of going through the work instruction and doing that kind of pre-job review there, that the safety considerations are just embedded in the nature of that work. And that's the type of simplification and embedded safety approach that I think we all need to get to, but still is lacking in many organizations from what I've seen. So with that little bit of background, I wanted to maybe start launching into a little bit more around AI. And so we have been, over the past few years, looking and approaching AI from three perspectives, as you see on the screen here. One is frontline. How do we engage folks more effectively? How do we capture information that's better quality, more robust, something that's more useful for us downstream as we look to make decisions and perform analytics and things like that? Because that's oftentimes, one of the big issues we have. But then also, how do we present information to folks on the front line that's helpful in their job, insightful? How do we present them with real time, micro learning, for example, so that they're not trying to remember something they learned a month ago or before they went on the job, and they can actually utilize it right there on the spot at the point of action. The second middle piece of it is, how do we take information that may be available to us and start performing some diagnostics, some analysis on that using AI? And then lastly, and this is ultimately what many of you perhaps are responsible for, is how do we start informing decision-making, better informing decision-making through the use of AI? And this is probably where some of you have started maybe dabbling in the use of AI, is taking some of your information and trying to derive insights from it that maybe weren't possible without AI, because either the volume of information is that great, or perhaps your perspective on it is biased in some way as an organization, and you need somebody to come at it and look at it through a different lens, if you will. So these are the kind of three areas that have been guiding our AI strategy. So at this point, before I jump into some demos, some demonstrations here, we're going to launch another poll question. And so the poll question is, which of the following AI use cases would be the most valuable to your EHS program? And select all that apply. And so we'll give a minute here for folks to respond, and then we'll see the results pop up in here. And apologies, I have this mismatch between my slides and what's actually being launched in the polls here, but hopefully you're able to see the poll question itself. Give folks just a little bit to respond to that. And here's our results. So the question again was, which of the following AI use cases would be the most valuable to your EHS program? Select all that apply. And hopefully some of you have started playing around with some of these use cases, but it's quite evenly split. Looks like our front runner is applying automatic updates to regulatory contents. Close second is prompting users to improve inputs, and I'm going to share with you an example of that. And we have a few others. AI-powered video analysis, I'll share with you an example of that. And some trending and charting. So that's great. Great to see that we have some folks kind of working evenly balanced across all these use cases. All right, so for my first demonstration here, I'm sharing with you, again, this is really getting at the question of how can we improve the quality of information that we're capturing on the front line from folks. And one thing that we've been doing, and again, this is an example of a very simple approach to AI. Actually, ironically, when we first started working with AI, it was probably about 6 years ago in this way. And I'll share with you an example of this here in a few minutes. we started working on PSIFs, so potentially significant incidents, fatalities, and we did some work there, analysis work that I'll share with you later. Only to realize later through that work that, really a lot of this hinges on getting good information, good descriptive narrative type information on the front line, so that the work we do downstream is more impactful and more insightful. And so this is kind of, we kind of recalibrated in terms of our focus on trying to improve the quality of the information that we're capturing on the front line. So this is an example of that, and I'm just gonna kind of let this run through here. So this is an example of, a form here, an input form here, where folks can log a good catch or something that, a near miss or concern that maybe they have observed out there on the shop floor and in the field. And so what you see happening right now is we are applying some AI to assess the quality of those inputs. And now we're utilizing some Gen AI to help influence and improve the quality of that input. So it's much more descriptive, as you see here in that example. And suddenly now we go from a not so great description of what happened and what we observed to something that is certainly much more useful. And so super simple application of this. You may have used similar things like this in other aspects of your life or professional life here. And this is one example where, this is super simple to deploy and something that you can embed into pretty much anything you do in terms of a digital workflow to help improve information. And so my next example is really around a more advanced application of this. And so this is actually some work that we've been doing with one of our strategic partners, 3Motion AI. We actually just hosted, I think it was yesterday, a webinar where we had some of our friends from Boston Beer, who's one of our subscribers and customers within our community here, who have been working with us to really improve their ergonomics program there within their operations. And so, for many years we've had an ergonomics assessment capability within the solution here, but a lot of that has hinged on having ergo experts visit your sites and walk around and observe people in the course of their work and makes those observations and assessments and then share feedback and things like that. And as many of you know, ergonomic experts are not everywhere, and certainly not everywhere you need them to be. And you may only have a couple of those folks on staff, and they certainly can't spend time at every single site or operation that you might have. And so how do we address that? And so really that's kind of like the genesis for some of the work that 3Motion AI has done out there, and certainly the basis for our partnership. So what we've done here is embedded 3Motion AI's video analytics capability, analyzing folks in the course of their work and providing feedback and assessing that work real time, if you will. And so they have both a real-time capability as well as kind of a near real-time capability that we've embedded into our ergonomics assessment solution here. And so I'm going to let this kind of play through and just provide a little bit of narrative of this as it goes through. And so this is our Ergo Evaluator solution here, and you'll see me click on the video evaluation. And so what we're uploading here is just a video of someone unloading some boxes within a box truck onto some rollers there. And as you can see here, the video is analyzing different points. And then what comes out of that is a score. And again, this is one approach to it, but there's certainly lots of different ways that you can slice this cat, and analysis can be based off of different models and such. But what we're doing here is generating a summary of that assessment based off of this video analysis, and then that's flowing into an assessment score that follows with some recommendations on where folks perhaps need to be spending some time. And that may be introduction of some new controls, or some things that you can do within the process. It might involve some training with folks, but either way, you can only imagine how much quicker this is than to try to have your one ergo expert spread around the various sites and operations you might have. So you've essentially taken that and democratized that expertise to some extent, at least to a point, across your operations very quickly and easily. And so that leads us into what I kind of touched on and hinted at a little bit earlier. Deeper, more sophisticated looks at risks. And so as I touched on earlier, we started to work around potential SIFs or PSIFs about 6 years ago or so at this point, I think. And a lot of that grew out of, as you see in my slide header there, there's only so much that even our most seasoned safety veterans can draw when they're looking at huge volumes of data. And I think there's also this tendency within organizations to look at information based off that experience, and oftentimes I think we suffer from some blind spots. And that's really the promise of this whole thing, and I think the promise of using some of this type of AI technology to work against these volumes of data is that it unlocks an ability to not only process huge amounts of information, but also bring in other sources of information. And so one thing that we've done here is we've combined information sources that are coming from our subscriber communities. And this might be in the form of observations, good catches, incidents, other types of operational information that you might have flowing in that might be good sources of information and the basis for the insights, but then also marrying that up with publicly available information that might come from OSHA, other types of knowledge bases, if you will, that we can incorporate, and the AI can act on all those volumes of information to start helping you identify and uncover what we're calling here hidden risks that may not be obvious to you, or perhaps for a host of reasons, but also not only the risk, but also precursors to that. So giving you a little bit of a heads up on things, conditions, behaviors, and such that might actually be a precursor to an incident. And so really that's the kind of basis for the work that we've been doing here. And so what I'm going to share with you, and I think this will be my last example in terms of demonstration here, is a look at our incident management module here, where we have embedded this, what we call our PSI advisor. So this is an embedded AI that allows the tool to take a look at information that may be captured. So let's say you have a near miss or something like that somebody's reporting in here, being able to run that through our model and to make a recommendation, first of all, as to whether or not this should be perceived or seen as a potential SIF, and then also providing some basis for that determination. And obviously through the course of that, then you start gathering some interesting information around precursors and things that will then give you an idea about where you should best spend your time and focus. So let me kind of let this run here, and I'll provide a little bit of narrative as this go through here. So here we've captured a description of the incident here and what happened, and we'll start doing some quality insights and guidance on the response. Now we're making a determination based off of the PSI advisor's recommendation as to whether or not this was a potential serious incident. And as it's working through that analysis there, then we provide a basis for that determination. And as you can see here, we've done some checking again against information that you might have available within your databases, information that we have available across our kind of broader database of information, including publicly available information. And what comes out of that is a much better insight or understanding of risks. And those risks might be hidden risks that may not have been revealed through the course of your analysis, but also a sense of some of the precursors that might lead to this. And so this is an example of the types of analysis that might come out of that. And so prior to this type of technology and this approach, you may have been looking at a list of risks and precursors, but perhaps there wasn't a great solid basis for the work that you're doing, the focus you might have. So this really, challenges that. And it's interesting because, obviously this is a model that we have been working to perform or to perfect and improve over time based off of additional information, always with some folks, some expertise. Many of you on the phone maybe have worked with this type of technology, and you're also helping the model to learn by applying your own experience and insights to this. So this is not something that necessarily sits alone and where you put 100% confidence in, but we certainly, I think, reached a level of confidence at around 90% with this, based off of the work that we've been doing over the past few years. So it's a great start, and I think a lot of promise moving forward. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and open up our last poll question, which will probably not match up with what I have on the screen here, but we can get that launched here, and we'll give folks a minute to respond.
And my apologies, Donovan. It looks like we're having an issue with launching that poll question there.
That's no problem.
My apologies for that.
No problem. And we can just move on from that. And if we have time during the Q&A, perhaps we can launch it. So really, at this point, Alan and Barry, I just wanted to kind of wrap things up for folks. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. I think when we talk about frontline engagement, frontline worker engagement and impact and things like this, this is not a new concept. I've been in the space now for 20 plus years, and many of you that are on the phone perhaps have been as well, or perhaps new to the space, new to the industry. But this is it's so critical because as many of you probably know, I certainly know from my experience, you can have the best processes in the world, you can have the best programs in the world, you can have the best technology in the world, but unless you can get folks engaged in a meaningful way on the front line and help them do their job more effectively, embed safety as just a natural part of what they do and not an add-on. Unless you're able to do those things, all the other things don't matter. Really the success of our programs, whether they be safety programs or sustainability programs, really depend on getting good, solid engagements and being from the front line and being able to help those folks do their jobs more effectively without getting in their way. And that's really what this is all about. As we think about these concepts and these challenges that we've had for a long time around, closing the gap between expectations that we have as an organization or how work should be performed and the actual reality on the floor and in the field, what I've shared with you is helpful and look practices for helping you do that. I mean, ultimately, I think, as I shared earlier, we have to make things as simple as we possibly can for folks on the front line. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. You've seen it many times before. We've all seen this movie many times before. And so whether that's presenting them with a technology that greatly simplifies what they're doing and doesn't get in their way in terms of form factor and usability and things like that, but also in terms of content, providing them perhaps things like micro learning that they can utilize real time as they're performing their work, and capturing that information in a super simple way that's not getting in their way. I think we can go a long way to really gap. And again, as you see in my kind of bottom line there, what we're trying to do, and this is interesting because I think we had a call back of our long to
And it looks like we have some audio issues with Donovan. So we will launch that third poll. Zoom has been a little glitchy today. We apologize. But let's get that last poll up there on your screen. And you can see our third question here. Will your organization prioritize AI solutions that incorporate Gen AI capabilities in the next 12 months? And we've got the possible responses there. Yes. I didn't realize Gen AI was being leveraged for EHS. No, we're just focusing on AI and other emerging technologies. We're not prioritizing any tech solutions in the next 12 months, or I'm not sure. So feel free to go ahead and answer which ones apply to you. We appreciate your responses there. And we'll let that run for just another few seconds here. We'll let everybody respond. And we'll see if we have Donovan back on the line here. May have had some audio issues. Okay, we're going to end that poll and share the results with you. And it looks as though our leader is, I'm not sure, 31%. And the second one here, we have, we're not prioritizing any tax solutions in the next 12 months. And then again, I didn't realize Gen AI was being leveraged for EHS is 26%. So Alan, I'm going to toss it over to you before we get, as I stop this poll.
Okay. Yeah. When Donovan gets back on, we will start the Q&A, but I can read the some disclaimers and transition to this Q&A. Thank Donovan for his wonderful presentation, first of all, and for sharing his insights with us. And before we start the Q&A, we want to remind everyone of the evaluation survey we're asking you to complete. This survey will open in a different screen after this webinar. And your input is important because it does help us improve our future webcasts. And once again, if you want to ask a question while we get things sorted, if you could please click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question, and press the send button. Yeah, we do have just to let you know, we do have a couple webinars coming up, or pretty much every Thursday from here on out until the holidays. So if you'll please join us for those as well. Yeah.
And Alan, just a reminder for our attendees today,
Yeah.
any unanswered questions, we will
Yeah.
send those along to Donovan. It looks like we have lost Donovan here. So let's give him just a minute to try and reconnect here. And as Alan mentioned, you can go to safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events to find our future webcasts.
And how long are those archived? Do you remember, Barry?
I believe those are up for 3 months.
Yes.
Yeah, so folks
Right.
can grab any of those that they want, including this presentation. So we will give it just another moment here. And as we mentioned, any questions that were submitted today, we do appreciate that. We will get those over to Donovan. And as he mentioned, being in the Carolinas, there have been some connectivity issues on his end, but we truly appreciate you attending today.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, it looks like we got word that Donovan is unable to rejoin us, unfortunately. So folks, we're going to wrap up today's presentation. Alan, I will throw it over to you.
Okay.
And it looks like we do want to mention, though, for folks who want more information, please go to benchmarkgensuite.com. And Alan, I'll send it over to you to wrap us up.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and thank you so much to Donovan Hornsby, the entire team from our sponsor, Benchmark Gen Suite, and of course, again, all of you who joined us today. Take care and have a safe day.